And welcome to WiseLink Academy. Today, we want to look into Tangency problem. As you can see the figure in front of you, we are told to reproduce that figure, but the condition there is that figure, the dimension given in that figure, we're going to reduce them, right? So from the question, we're going to be using half full size. So anywhere you are seeing 2, I'm using 1. Anyway, you are saying 50, I'm using 25. So take note of that. I'm using half full size to construct that figure, as you can see in front of you. How do I start about this? My first task now is to start from the baseline, from the smaller circle here, as you can see my arrow indicating. So I'll take my let's say my t-square this way. I will draw horizontal line, long one, short one, long one, short one, long one, short one. Alright, I have this. So my next task is to place my t-square, my set square this way, right, and draw a vertical line upward. A vertical line upward. As you can see, similarly, I need to take it upward so as to provide SS horizontal line. I have this, right? So this is a center point, right? So this is center point here. At this point is that point you are seeing my arrow indicating at the right corner of the screen. There is bigger circle of what? Of diameter of what? 50. As you can see, they said 3 buses, diameter of 50, right? Drill is what? Diameter of what? 24. So note that we're using half full size. So I'm not using 50 diameter. Rather, I'm using what? 25 diameter. So half of 25 is what? 12.5. So I will take my compass and measure 12.5 on my meter rule this way. On my meter rule, 12.5 on my meter rule. So if I measure 12.5, I'll be having this 12.5. So this is my 12.5. At this point here, can you see that? I will place it here and draw the circle this way. Right, here is the first circle you are seeing in front of you. Right, if you observe closely, that circle you are seeing, there's a distance, there's an height of what? Height of 25, right? Upward. So I need to measure out 25 to get the second bus. So from this point here to this point 25. Right? At that point, I will take my t-square this way and draw horizontal line, long one, short one, long one, short one, long one, short one, long one, short one. So I have this, right? So automatically, neutrally, the height was 50. So I'm not using 50. I'm using what? Half of the size. So that's why I use 25. So take note of that, please. So note that I will not be using the dimension there. I'll be using half of dimension. So I have 25 this way, right? So next task is what? From this point you are seeing, this point here is that point you are seeing my arrow indicating. Is a distance of what? 50, 50, right? But I'm using half full size. That's what? 25, 25. So I'll take my meter rule this way, measure 25. From this point to this point 25. I will place it at this center point here. Strike an arc left and right. Right? So it simply means that at this point here will be my center for that smaller circle, and this point here will be my center for that what? For the other circle. So take note that this circle has the same radius with this circle here, right? So there's an, if you observe again, this place here is that place you are seeing my arrow indicating. There's an height of what? Height of 26. So I'm using half. That's 13. So measure 13 upward. From this point here to this point, 13, 10, 11, 12, 13. I have 13 at this point, right? 13 at that point. So at that point, I will take my t-square this way. I will draw center line, long one, short one, long one, short one, long one, short one. I have this. So next up, my third circle will be here. So we said 3 bosses, diameter of 50, drill of what, diameter of 24. So those 3 bosses are that 3 circle. So one will be here, one will be here, one will be here. So let's cross out the circle with the same radius. So just take a to this point here, measure the radius of this circle here, this one. Measure the radius, or you measure out what we did before earlier, that's 12.5. Or just take it this way. At this point here, draw the circle this way. I see that at the other point here, I will draw the circle this way. So I have definitely what? Draw the circle, the 3 circles, right? As you can see in front of you. That drill you are seeing, drill diameter of 24, it simply means that smaller circle inside is called drill. So I'm not using 24, I'm using diameter of 12. So half of 12 is what? 6. I'll measure out 6 from this point here to this point is 6. I will place it at the center here to draw the circles this way. 1 is here, come to this point here, do the same thing. Similarly, come to this point here and do the same thing. So I have successfully draw the 3 bosses here. If you observe, this point is that point you are seeing my arrow indicating. There's a circle. That circle has a diameter of what? Diameter of what? 32, right? So I'm not using 32. I'm using diameter of 16. So half of 16 is what? 8. So measure 8. This 10, 8, right? This is 5, 6, 7, 8. From this point to this point is 8. So right at this point here, place it there. Draw the circle this way, right? After I have successfully drawn my circle, my next task now is that in this same circle there's a smaller circle there, right? There's a smaller circle of diameter of what? 16. So I'm not using 16, I'm using what? Diameter of 8, because we're told to use half full size. So diameter of 8 becomes what? 4. I'm using 4 as the radius. So 4 from this point here to this point is 4. At this center point here, draw the circle this way. So having drawn this, my next task is that if we observe, we have definitely drawn the circle, all the circles at the down part. So what is my next task? My next task is that there's an arc closing all these circles. External arc. We call this external arc. Why? Because those arc looks as if it looks like an empty tummy. So they're called external arcs. So we need to cover those circles with what? External arcs. Alright, what do I do first? If you observe closely, at this point, there's an arc of what? Arc of radius of what? 50. So I'm not using 50, I'm using what? 25. Initial 25. Now, whenever you see an external arc, if you check my previous video on Tangency problem, we said whenever I see an arc forming an empty tummy, you had. So that becomes what? I'm going to, this diameter here is the same as this diameter and it's the same as this diameter. Whatever I do here, I will do it here and I will do it here. That's the concept. So that will now be 25. If I had 25 plus the diameter becomes what? 12.5. You know the diameter we used to draw this one was initially it was diameter of 50. So we use half full size, diameter of 25. So I'll divide 25 by 2. I have 12.5 to draw this circle. So 25 plus 12.5, I will have 37.5. So simply measure 37.5 on your meter rule. At this point, take it down this way, right? So I will place it at this center point here, strike an arc up, come to the center point here, strike an arc down, right? At this point here, take it this way 1. At this point here, take it this way 2. Why am I doing that? Because the arc are of the same radius 50. 50. But I use half, that's 25. So they are of the same what? They are of the same radius. That's why I use it this way. Then I will take it at this point here, where they meet, where they cut. At that point where they meet, I will draw the arc to connect the 2 circles. So I have this. This is my one. This is one. I've totally drawn this. Similarly, come to this point here and gauge it to touch the two circles. To touch two circles this way. As you can see, next task, I need to cover up this part, right, and this part here. So how do I go about that? The same idea. We said whenever you see an external arc, you add. Next up, my diameter here that I used to draw the circle is what? My radius rather is 12.5. I got to that 12.5. So 12.5 for the radius of this place is what? Is what? 50. It is 50, but I'm using 25. So 12.5 plus 25, I have what? 37.5. So 37.5 again. 37.5. At this point to this point, 37.5. Right? I will place it at this point here. Strike an arc. Right? Strike an arc this way. If you observe closely, this circle and this circle are of the same dimension. Come to this point here, strike that same arc this way. Can you see that? My next task is that these two circles, this is why I did that is that this circle, if I strike an arc this way, is connecting to this small circle. And rather this circle too is connected to this smaller circle of the same dimension. So I strike an arc up here, do that down here too. Now, this smaller circle is having a what? Radius of what? Radius of what? We use 4. Sorry, rather. We use 8 to draw this bigger circle here. Not the smaller. We use 8 to draw this. And we use 4 to draw this. So 8. So 8 plus what? Plus my radius here, 25. So I get 33. So measure 33 out from your compass, from a meter rule, 33. From this point to this point, 33. Right? So I'll at this point here strike an arc to cut it, strike an arc to cut it. So where the cut is at this point and at this point. So at those points, take it here at this point here. So I will what? Gauge it. I will gauge it. So gauging it, I'll be having this. Can you see that? Come to this point, so I will gauge it to see what we have. I will gauge it. Gauge those points together. Right? If I gauge my points together, I'll be having this. As you can see, so we have successfully draw all the external arcs. But if you notice, if you watch closely, there's an arc connecting these two parts here. As you can see, my arrow indicating at the right corner of the screen. So what I'll do is that the radius there is going to be what? Initially was what? The radius of what? 26. So I'm using half of 26, which is what? 13. So therefore, that arc is connecting circles of the same dimension, right? So that becomes the radius I used to draw the circle is what? 12.5. So 12.5 plus 13, I will have 25.5. So measure 25.5 at this point to this point, 25.5. So take it at this point here, strike an arc downward this way, right? Similarly, come to this point, strike an arc to cut it. So where they meet is at this point. At that point, gauge it, right? I will gauge it. At that point, I will simply what? I will simply gauge it to have my exact point, right? So make sure it is well gauged, right? So if I gauge it, I'll have this. So I've successfully drawn this. So my next task now is to draw the other arc at this point. So that other arc is having the same radius of 13. But the idea here is that, what we used, the diameter here is what? 12.5. The radius that we use is 12.5 to draw this bigger circle here. So 12.5 plus 13. 12.5 plus 13, I have 25.5, right? I'll measure 25.5 at this point to this point is 25.5. At this point here, I will put it down, strike an arc downward this way, right? Downward this way. This is my arc. Let me clean all this so I can see what I'm doing. I'll have my arc this way, right? That's my first arc. Next up, the radius I used to draw this is 8. So 8 plus 13. 8 plus 13, I will have 21. So measure 21 at this point. 21 to this point is 21, right? I will place it at this point to cut that arc. So where the arc cut is at this point, where they meet, so gauge it to touch those two circles. I will gauge it to touch the two circles. So I have this. So here's what I have. So we have successfully what? Reproduced out all what is at the base. So now let's move to the elevation. What is at the top? Right? So doing that, what do I do next? I know from my diagram, as you can see at the right corner of the screen, the distance, the height from this point here, this point is that point you are seeing my arrow indicating. From this point, there's an height of what? Height of 64. Initially, the height is what? 126, as you can see clearly. But we are using what? Half full size, which is what? 64. So I'll measure from this point here, I'll measure 64 upward. So take a meter this way and measure 64 upward, right? From this is my 64. At this point is my 64. So at that point 64, I will what? Take my t-square this way. I'll take it up to that point, right? So I will draw a center line, right? So long one, short one, long one, short one, long one, short one, long one, short one, right? Short one, long one. So I have this. So this is my center point where they meet. Now, if you observe closely, that circle, there's a drill, there's a smaller circle here and a bigger circle. That smaller circle has a radius of what? A diameter of 50. So we're not using diameter of 50, we are using diameter of what? 25. Now, half of 25 is what? 22.5. Right? Half of 25 is what? 12.5 rather. 12.5. So I'll take my compass, I'll measure 12.5. At this point to this point, 12.5. Take it to this center point here where they meet. Draw a thick circle this way. So that's for the smaller one inside. Now there's a bigger circle again if you observe closely. That bigger circle has a diameter of what? 102, right? So I'm not using the diameter given. I'm using half of the diameter, which is what? 51, right? So therefore, 51 divided by 2, I will have 25.5. So measure 25.5 from this point here to this point, 25.5. I'll place it at this point here, center point, and draw another circle this way, right? So I have this. So we are almost getting close. All right. My next task is that after I've drawn these two circles, if I observe closely, at this point here, right, the distance of what? Of 64 to the left, 64 to the right. So I'm not using 64, rather I'm using what? I am using 32 because half of 64 is what? 32. So measure 32 on your meter row to this point, right? So I'll place at this point here, this center point, strike an arc to the left and to the right, right? So this is my arc here. So at those points, I will draw its center line, a vertical line upward, right? With help of my t-square, take it this point here, upward, long one, short one, long one, short one, right? Similarly, come to this point here. I have long one, short one, long one, short one, long one, short one. I have this way. So similarly, take this point here too, upward. This one, take it faint upward this way, right? Faint line. come to this point here, take this one too upward of the what? Faint line. So I have this. I have what you are seeing in front of you. What's my next task? My next task is that at this point here, this point and this point is that point you are seeing my arrow indicating. I will draw a smaller circle. That small circle has a what? As you can see, they said 2 hole diameter of 16. As you can see, 2 hole. It simply means those two circles, this smaller circle here, those two circles are what? Diameter of 16. So I'm not using them. I'm using diameter of what? 8. So I will divide 8 by 2. I have 4. So I'll measure 4 on my compass, right? So from this point here to this point is 4, right? So I'll place at this point here to draw my circle. This is 1, right? Similarly, come to this point here, 4. So I have this 2 here. Next up, that smaller circle, there's another circle outside of it, right? As you can see my arrow indicating, that circle has a radius of what? Radius of what? 16. You can see my arrow indicating that dimension. Radius of what? 16. So I'll measure what? I'll measure. I'm not using radius of. I'm using radius of what? 8. Half of 16 is 8. So measure 8. So from this point here to this point is 8. At this point, take it at this point here. Draw a faint circle, please. A faint circle at this point. Come to the other point here. Draw a faint circle, please. A faint circle. So I have these two faint circles here. Now my next task now is that if you observe closely, there is an arc connecting this bigger circle with all this smaller circle here, right? So what do I do? Here is the idea, please. That arc connecting them is an external arc. So for every external arc, you add, you fill, right? So that becomes the radius of that arc is going to be what? Radius of what? 26. So half of 26 is what? 13. So measure 13. From this point to this point is 13, right? So sorry. The result is what? 13, right? So I will simply add 13 with my diameter I used here. Initially, I'm having 50. The diameter I use here is 51. So half of 51, we use 20.5 to draw this bigger circle. So 20.5, right? 20.5 plus 13 I will have 38.5. So measure 38.5 on meter row, 38.5 to this point, right? Come to this point here, strike an arc, right, left. Let's take it this way. Let me clean all this smaller arc so that we will not get confused, right? So let me clean all this arc so that we will not get confused of those arcs, right? So I haven't done this. I haven't done this. Strike an arc down this way, left this way. I have this, right? So what I use for this and this, that's the idea. Next up, do you know why I'm doing that? Because this circle is connected to this of the same dimension. That's why I use it this way. Next up, this circle here, small circle, has a radius of what? What did we use to draw this one? This one. I mean this one. This one. We used radius of what? Radius of what? That should be radius of 8. If you can see, radius of 16. We use half of radius of 16. That's what? Radius of 8. So 8 plus 13, right? 8 plus 13, I will have 21. So measure 21 on meter rule. From this point here, from this 21, from this point to this point 21. At this point here, can you see 21? From this point here, strike an arc up, down to cut those lines, those arcs you have drawn. Come to this point here, similarly cut it this way and cut it this way. Where they meet, simply gauge it to touch the two circles. From this point here, gauge it to touch the two circles, right? Gauge it to touch the two circles. So I will have this. If I gauge it, let's start from let's take it this way. I will touch two circles, right? I have this, you can see, right? Come to this point here to touch the two circles, right? To touch the two circles, right? So I have this, right? I will have this. Next up, come to this point too. At this point, to touch the two circles this way. Come to the other point here. At this point here, to touch the two circles this way. So we have drawn those arcs. So my next task here is that I will take in all those circles that I need now. So I'll take in this circle here, right? I'll take in this because what? I need it now. I'll take in this part. Come to the other point here. I will take in this too because that's the point I need. As you can see what I'm doing. Similarly, I can just come to this point too and take in these circles here. So I will take in these circles here because I need them. Similarly, taking this one too, right? Similarly, taking this part here too. Similarly, I'll take in every circle because they are all taken from the question. So I'll take in this one here too. So taking this, right? So I've roughly taken those circles that I need, right? So taking every circle the question. So I have this. What's my next task? The last thing I want to do here is that there's an arc connecting this line, connecting this line we have drawn and this line we have drawn. Let me draw this part very well. A straight line from this center point here upward, right? Upward. So now I need to clean out this radius so I will not get confused. Clean out this, or clean out this, or clean out this, right? So now what I need to do is that at this center point I need to extend the line. So long one, short one, long one, short one, this way. Now if you observe closely, the arc of that arc that we're talking about is that arc you have seen my arrow indicating. That arc is going to be a radius of 38. So measure half of 38 is what? 19. So I'm using 19. So the first task now is take your 19 from this point. From this point here. So I measure 19, right? So from this point here to this point is 19, right? Similarly, from this point here, 19 to this point here is 19, right? So I'll take my t-square this way. I will draw a vertical line upward to touch that line I extended this place at this place. Similarly, take it simultaneously at this point to draw a line upward this way, right? So my next task is that if you observe closely, right, that arc is connected to this circle here, right? This arc, that arc we're talking about, I want to draw now at this point, is connected to this circle. So what I will do is what, and that circle, that arc is what, an external arc I will add. That becomes 19 plus 8. So we use 8 to draw this circle here. I mean this circle here. So that becomes 19 plus 8. I will have 27. Right? So I will measure out what? 27 to this point, 27. I will place at this point here, strike an arc. Similarly, come to this point here, strike an arc. Why? Because they are of the same dimension, right? So I'll just put my compass at this point here to what? To gauge it, right? I will gauge it this way. I will gauge it this way. Similarly, come to the other point here. At this point, I will gauge it together. So if I get it, I have this. Right? I'm done with the arc here and this point. If you observe, the radius of what we used to draw this, the radius of what we used to draw this was the radius what I used to draw this was 12.5, right? 12.5. So 12.5 plus 19. 12.5 plus 19, I have 31.5. So measure 31.5. 31.5 is at this point to this point. So put at this point here, strike an arc, right? So at when it's cut that line, that 19 that I have drawn, that line I have established, gauge it, right? I will gauge it. So if I gauge it, I will have this, right? Right? I have this. Similarly, what I use to draw this smaller circle here is what it was. I used 8 to draw the small circle here, right? So 8 plus 19, 8 plus 19, I will have 27. So measure 27 at this point to this point, 27. So come to this point here, strike an arc. Where the arc cut is at this point. At that point, gauge it to touch that vertical line, right? Touch vertical line. So I get it to touch vertical line. I'll have this. So I have this. Similarly, I will now use my meter rule to close them up from this point here to this point, and from this point here to this point. So my next task now, we have successfully what? Drawn out the figure. What's our next task? Our next task is what? Dimension. That is, repeat the show out the dimension. Let's take out this point here. So I have this at this point, and I have this at this point. At this point here, I have this at this point. Right? So now let's dimension this. What do I do? The dimension simply means, let's take it this way. Here is what I have after the dimension. If you have found this class helpful, do not forget to click on the subscription button and like. Thank you. Welcome to WiseLink Academy. Thanks for watching.